Welcome to the channel. In this video I'm going to give an overview of creating a map, and then I'm going to document the steps in publishing a custom map that I've created into Steam. And the reason I'm doing this is that since the game went into full release and they also released the Biomes DLC, I've had a number of questions from people saying I'm trying to create a map or publish it and I'm having all sorts of problems. Now guys, I can completely sympathize with that point of view. I think when I published my first map into Steam, it took me about 3 days to get it right, because the publication process is not intuitive by any stretch of the imagination. Trying to answer those questions, I thought, well, what I'll do is I will actually document my map publication process. And then eventually, I thought, well, what if I'm going to do that, I might as well talk about how you actually create maps in Workers and Resources Soviet Republic, because it's quite a fun exercise, but it can get a bit complicated. Now, the tools for creating and publishing a map are actually in the workshop here. And what the items you've got here is it says your items work in progress. And this is the trap I fell into when I created my first map. And the impression I get from some of the questions I get, some of you have also fallen into this trap. You come into here and you get this kind of strange screen here, and they've got the create new item, because it gives the impression you've got to create a new item to create a map, but truthfully that's not incorrect. Then you get presented with this kind of blank screen with some boxes in, and these are all mandatory fill-ins. And then eventually down here, once you've filled all that in, you actually then click this to actually create the item. Now, one mistake I will point out here, and I'll re-emphasize it when I actually publish a map, is that if you're doing a map, you must be on landscape. Because once you whack that button, what you've committed is almost irretrievable. I mean, you can come back and re-edit this, but the item you created here is fixed. You can't for some reason, you can't come back and change this, because I think what happens is, because this has got building skins, editor parts, scripts. I think you go back the other way, you'll find buildings, types, vehicles. I think when you set this up, it literally does lock in your your item which you're going to publish to Steam. So if you make a mistake here, it's far better to just go back, start again. And anyway, we're going to get rid of that, because when you're creating a map, the tool you're interested to begin with is the terrain editor. The reason for that is that you can access the terrain editor from the whip, but what actually happens is the process of creating the item creates a map which you're expected to keep saving back into, because that map is locked into the whip item. By going to the terrain editor, you've got a lot more versatility. As you can see here, the map I'm going to be publishing is called, this is a working title, it's called Arctic Map V4. And what you can do in the terrain editor is store multiple versions, which is very important if you're going to do some of the more risky exercises. The map down the bottom here, it says early start 1917 population, is a map that I was preparing for the full release for an early start. Of course, what sunk this map was the fact that they introduced the Biomes DLC. And after seeing Siberia, I really wanted to do Siberia. But of course, what you've got to do is select these options before you can actually create the map itself. Now, if you don't have the Biomes DLC, what you will get is the default map, or most likely what might happen is, like it used to do before, the moment you said terrain editor, it would take you straight through into the default screen. And then what you can do is choose desert map, jungle map, and Siberia map. And I'm going to repeat the process I use to create the map that I'm going to be publishing. So I click Siberia, and what you do is you end up on here. And effectively what you've got is the metaphorical equivalent of a blank page for a writer. The simplest way to create a custom map, and I can recognize this when I look at maps being published on Steam, you can normally tell whether someone's hand created the map, because this is basically what you do is you use these edit tools here. They're more powerful versions of the edit tools that you get in the base game, and the characteristics of people who created maps by hand are the fact they invariably have a lot of flat space. They have a very a series of rivers drawn on them, and then a few mounds which are kind of put together by using the up tool here. So that's a characteristic of people who hand draw the map. Now that can be incredibly tedious, and I know that from personal experience, because the first map I created was done by hand editing. Now the second option you can do is you come down to the terrain generator here, and you can have a lot of fun with this. And advanced warning, guys, this can be very addictive. And what you've got here is you can set a terrain. What I always do is use diamond, and then what you can do is fiddle around with these, like this, hills and all that. You know, just draw it there, click generate, and what you will get is this. And now this is like a kind of super version of the random map generator. And what you can do is quite literally just go through here, fiddling around with this. And this is what I do when I actually first start out with a map. And what I'm looking for is a basic map with water on it that fits the idea. Now, just to kind of explain the process, when I create a map, I start with a theme and I have an idea in my head what I'm looking for. And what I do is I just keep going through here, and you don't even have to change the settings. You just keep looking like that, and you get water and you get bits and pieces. This is by far the simplest way to map, because if you kind of maybe increase the flatland a little bit and all this, and you add weights, maybe a few more lakes, and you can just keep doing this. Now the third way that you can actually create a map is by importing a PNG file. And the normal way for importing a PNG file is if you look in the workshop and you see maps which represent actually a real life area. These can be obtained from various terrain mapping services available on the web. And what happens is that you go in, you select the area, and then you get a grayscale image what the terrain is. And when you import it, then the map changes. What I do is I keep playing around with the generator till I get a map that looks roughly the way I want it. And then what I do is I draw this up here and get rid of the toolbar. I literally just take a snapshot, because all I'm after is the terrain and water. And then what I do then is I take that into Photoshop and create a grayscale image from it. And then that starts what I call my roughing out process. And what I'm going to do now is just put up my first roughing out grayscale. And as you can see here, it's quite light. Now, the important thing to understand about grayscales is the darker the color, the lower the ground, and the lighter the color, the higher the mountain. So what you end up with is this kind of variation of terrain with the water in between. What I'm going to do is I'm going to import this grayscale in, because what I do as part of my process is once I've taken the snapshot and I've turned it into grayscale, I import it in and see what it looks like in the terrain editor. Obviously, the one I'm going to import now is a lightened version of what was a result of quite a lot of editing, but it'll give you an idea of what it looks like. So I'm just going to import that in and I'll show it to you. And what you see here, this is what you'd call the rough template of my map that I'm going to be publishing. This is obviously a lot more refined than the map that I would have got from the mini map from the terrain generator. But what I do, and this is personally a personal preference, so I'm not recommending it, is what I do is I have Workers and Resources Editor open, I have Photoshop Editor open, and what I do is I use various tools in Photoshop to build the lakes and the mountains. I've obviously built up a catalogue of sample mountains obtained from real life, because what I do is go out and get sample areas. Then what I do is I build the map up in a series of layers, and I keep flipping backwards and forwards till I get to the point of where we've got here now. It's not perfect, and because you can see some of the kind of terrain is a little bit jagged, it's got lots of bits of spikes in here. So when I get to the point where I'm happy with the terrain and the general layout of the mountains, and what I'll do is I'll just bring up the final version. What this is I've taken the light colored map that I've just showed you, and what I've done then is duplicate the layers and use the multiply command in Photoshop to darken the map down. And then what I do then is use a mask layers to actually darken down the mountaintop. So if I import this PNG in, what you see, you might not see a great difference, but it does have an effect. You see straight away now it's actually disappeared below the water. You can get this thing, but I actually know the rough height that I want. No, it's not that one. So I adjusted it since. On the surface, this looks exactly the same as before, but if you kind of look round what you'll find is there are some kind of the terrain is a little bit flatter, and it's more importantly the some of the terrain there, and then once you've got the map to roughly the point that you want it, what you do then is adjust the water level down a bit till you get the effect that you want. Now, I wanted to create a fairly boggy view, so I had a lot of this low-lying maps. Now, the other thing I will draw your attention to is these horrible black lines that are spread across the map. There's also an annoying feature with this map, terrain editor. You have a day-night cycle. I think the idea is meant to allow you to do it, but I wish it was you could switch it off all the time. The one thing I will show you is these really dark lines. Now, the reason these dark lines are on here is that I like to draw where the border's going to be in Photoshop, because I find it a lot easier than just because you've got it's a bit tricky doing the border. If I actually show it to you, if we come over to here, because we're gonna what you have to do is you can change the border by doing this, and you've got a button here, and what you do is you put in these like this. Now you've got to be a bit careful. If you don't click on the map when you've got this, then you can drag these around like this and create all sorts of strange bits and pieces. The problem with this is that you tend to have to work in close. So what I do is I draw the roughly where the border is. I don't do it all the way around. I just want it where it cuts across mountains. Here I draw it in there, and then I literally trace the border across the map like this. I mean, you could do it before you even do the terrain if you wanted to, and I draw the border in, and then what I do is I go back to Photoshop, I take out the layer with the border drawn on, and then I bring the map back in again, which means I don't have to fill in all these holes. But what it means is I can plan my border in Photoshop. In fact, I do a lot of bits and pieces in Photoshop because I just find it easier, mainly because I actually know Photoshop quite well. So I'm able to kind of manipulate images and get effects going. Once you've got your terrain sorted out, and also if you want to, your border, if you're not going to go for a square border, the next thing I would really strongly suggest that before you get too much in is you drop the water level down low. And what you want to do is where your deep water is, put a flat bottom in like this. And then what you want to do is get that there and then go round and smooth these edges off like this. Now, the reason you want to make the bottom flat is that because there's a tool in the game which actually allows you to draw rocks. If I turn off the terrain here. Now, this is something you do in the late stage. You don't want to put trees, rocks until you've got all your terrain sorted out. But for curiosity's sake, I'll just do it. What you've got down here is auto generate. And what you'll do is, well, if we come put the water back in again. Come there, put the water back in. Yeah, that'll do for the purposes of what we're doing. Actually, no, it's horrible. Should we go to 58, I think. I think it's 58. Can't remember what you'll find is that when you generate the rocks automatically, or the rock textures, if you don't have a flat sea bottom, what you'll get is lots of speckles in your deep water, which makes the map look a bit ugly. You also get these very hard lines here where you've got vertical drops. This is the reason why I was saying that you need to smooth some of your coastlines, and what that does is it reduces it. But don't be too obsessed with it, because you can always use the rock editing tool. You can literally come in and just erase big chunks of it like this. So I mean, this wouldn't exist on the map itself, so you can literally go in and edit everything. Now, there are two tools I want to talk about when you're creating a map, which they're very powerful, and also if you don't have a really top spec machine, it could really make your machine creak. And with both of them, I would strongly recommend dropping a save before you actually do it. The first one is in here. It's called Smooth. Now, I'm not going to set it off because even at the lowest settings. What this does is it smooths all your mountains out across the entire map. If you hit this, be prepared to go and make a cup of coffee sometimes, especially if you've got an older machine. It is very, very intense from that perspective. Now, the other one is this water erosion tool. And again, you've got two options. You've got, it's called a rain tool. You've got one that does the whole map. And you also got one that does kind of individual sections. Now, I won't do the whole map because, again, it's a pretty dangerous tool because it will literally create effects all the way across the map. But what I will do is, just because they both work the same way, is what you do is you kind of set the strength and all this. And what you do is you just draw over this area like this. What you see is the blue. Now, what you want to do is, when you're using this tool, is wait for all the blue to disappear before you do the next layer. And what you'll do in here, just do another one like that. And then if I put on there, what you'll see in here is that you can give your mountains a fairly jagged area. Plus, if you do it in the flat areas, you can get some really nice contours like this. These tools you want to use before you put any roads, anything on, because if you start to do details and then you turn these tools loose, what will happen is you can mess everything up, because you'll find roads disappear, buildings disappear. Another feature with the rain map is that what you will end up with is lakes around your mountains like this. The reason for that is that the water goes down and it erodes down into there. But on the positive side, what you can get is some very interesting effects with small lakes and bits and pieces by using it. But again, top tip, do all this before you do anything else, because they can be incredibly destructive, and always drop a save before you do it. And also, if you use the rain tool for the whole map, do 1 or 2 iterations, stop, have a good look round, and then if it looks okay, but you may want to try again, is make a separate save from the first one and then do it again. So what I want to do now is just go to the final version of my map. If we go up to here, and we're just going to load in Arctic Map v4. And just to show you, this is the final version near enough of the map. And what you can see is I've done quite a lot of work on the rivers. Again, top tip, guys, sort these rivers out before you get into any details with buildings. And you can see also now that the border's been drawn in nicely. And I've also done quite a lot with the rocks and mountains for 2 reasons. One is that Siberian maps can have a lot of light coloured glare in the winter. So what I've done is I put lots of rocks on and the mountains. Now, I'm not going to talk about the theme of this map because that's way beyond the scope of this video. In fact, I'll be making a separate video on the theme. But you can see it's a populated map. I've put buildings in. What I will suggest is that down here, the buildings that you can place safely are on the bottom menu, and the ones that are available for general editing, which you cannot get from the main menus, are these buildings here. These crowns you will have if you've actually got the Biomes DLC, and they're split into 3 groups. So you've got Arab houses, Siberian houses, and Asian houses. And of course, this is a Siberian map, so I've put a lot of them in, but I really do like these buildings if I'm doing a populated map. And of course, what you've also got is a selection of churches, mosques, and temples. What you've also got here is various other bits of the infrastructure, like the customs houses and the foreign power connections, if you want to give power to your map. But as I said, you can actually use any building on here can be placed on the map. So, for example, I've used some buildings from the tourism map, these sight towers, to act as watchtower towers over this border here. I've also put a gateway in here for a reason. Also up here, I've put in a couple of ports. When you're creating populated maps, it's a difficult balance of knowing where to stop, because it's very tempting to start putting infrastructure in. But What you've got to do is try and create a populated map that's interesting but still allow players to put their own creative edge on it. Now for me it's a little bit easier because I'm creating this map for my own series, therefore I've got a clear vision in my head about what the scenario for this map is. So the populated areas are put in to serve that purpose. But if you're creating a general populated map, just be aware of what you're creating. And the other thing I would suggest is that when you get to this point, is to do some play testing. Make sure that your ports are connected, how deep the water is. For example, this map here, I've got about 40 hours of play testing on it, just to make sure the mechanics are working. Now, by play testing, I'm not talking about the actual play testing for the actual series. What I do is I come in with easy mode on, and I just check that the ships can sail up and down the rivers, things like this. The connections are sound, so that I know they're going to work. More importantly, where I put in border posts, I make sure these border post connections are working as well. So that's what I mean by playtesting, not actually practicing the series, but just testing the mechanics, making sure things will work and everything works as a unit. And another one I would strongly suggest is that if you put in a rail link, make sure is run a train up to the border and back. All you got to do is drop a depot and just put in a quick warehouse here, and then just run the train backwards and forwards on the line, just to make sure the entire line is connected, because it's no more frustrating if you put a rail line in and somebody comes in and finds out that it's not fully connected. So we're kind of now got to the point where the map's ready to go. And I'll just talk finally, as I've already previously alluded to, that once you've got the train done, next thing you want to do is put the rocks in and make sure that the rock texture is suited well. The resources, you can edit them. I'm not going to show you the resources because that will be a giveaway. Plus the fact there's a bit of a secret with this map in the fact that because I'm going to be playing on the map, and normally when I do the resources, I do the resources relatively early so I can forget where they are. But because there's the short time scale on this, my wife has actually done the resources on this map. What she did is took the default resources, which I showed you, and I gave her some rules of what I wanted, and she's actually edited the resources. But so I don't actually know where the resources is, and I don't want to look. So that's the reason why I'm not going to show you where the resources are. Then once you've sorted the resources out, what you want to do then is put in any buildings, roads, bridges, everything like this. Put that in last, and then finally put the trees in. Now there is a auto generate for trees here, and it's down here. It says auto generate trees, and you click here. Now I find the results pretty unpredictable, because if you come in here, you're supposed to be able to select what trees you go, but I find that I don't really feel that maybe this is actually part of the auto generate. What I tend to do is I use the auto generate to get some of them in, and then what I do is I hand paint the trees in here. And of course with the biomes, I've tried to choose trees that would fit in with Siberia. I think the trees I actually used were, I put in some pines, some spruce, which are the really big ones in here, and then I put in a little bit of fuchsia, and then I just literally went around painting them. So the tree density on this map has actually been set to kind of break up the vast expanse of white during the Siberian winter. What you can do, if I now quit out of this, I'm going to make sure and quit back to the main menu. What you can do, and what I would strongly recommend, is that before you get to the web process, is go to a custom game. You go through here, this is all the maps I've subscribed to over the years. What you'll find down the end here is a series of maps that are in your editor. Now the annoying thing with this is that it also puts up the auto saves. It doesn't distinguish between the two. And what I do is I come in here, select the map, and one thing, actually I haven't done this, so I'm just going to do this off bump. I set the population to maximum, and then I select something that I want to look at, because all I want to do is see how the map looks when it's actually started within the game, because sometimes things don't look exactly what they're doing. Now, the reason I set the population to maximum is the fact that I want to know what the maximum population for the map is, and it's 5,254. And what I do in here is I just kind of have a quick check, because the game sometimes has a little bit of a problem with burying track and bits of road when it comes in. And the other thing I also check, because the game has a habit, it's done it again, it flips these borders when they're close together, but they are right. It's just the fact that they've been flipped backwards and forwards. The nearest one should be the red stars, and the furthest one should be the blue stars, which you can see on the mini map here. So this is the final check. This is the final check that I do before I actually go to the publication stage. And at the moment, I'm still in that check process, because there's one more step I need to do as part of this publication process, which is, in fact, I can do it now, actually, come to think of it, is I want to see what this map looks like in winter. Now, I've got a couple of scripts. Oh, they've moved it. It was down here, but it's up here now. Where are they, scripts? What I've got is, this is a mod. And what this does is it allows you to move the map backwards and forwards. Now, one tip here, guys, is don't use this on an active game, because the game may move back a month. You can move it back years, but if you move the game back or forward a year, don't expect anything to change. All it does is it just moves the date. And while I'm just doing this, so I'm just going to have a quick look round just to see what the map looks. You can see the effect of the trees now, in the fact that it kind of knocks that white patch back down here. You can see the white here. The white's a bit glary around here, so what I might need to do is add a few extra trees, denser, make the trees around here a bit denser. As I say, this is a check that I'm literally doing in real time. It's just to see what the map actually looks like in winter. So I've got a bit of a problem up the top left here, and also I think this one's working. Yeah, I'm overall happy with that. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now, guys, is I've got to do that fix, and then I'll pick you up in the next part of the video where I will go through the publication process. Okay, welcome back. In this section, what we're going to do is create the WIP and upload the map to Steam. And the way to do that is, if we click on Workshop, go into Your Items WIP, and we see here is a list of the maps that you've uploaded from this physical machine. And what we do now is go down to the bottom right hand corner, and it says create new item. So we click on here. What you get is this screen, which is not exactly the most helpful in the world, but the first thing I really suggest you do is come where it says item type, change this to landscape. Now, if you don't change it to landscape, one of two things will happen. One, when you click the save button after you've filled in all the boxes, you will have the wrong item type and you can't change it, so you'd have to do it all over again. And the second reason is that if you don't have it on landscape, you won't get the option to be able to integrate your map into this item. And what we're going to do is just come into here, and what I always do is put the proper file name in here, because this makes it a lot easier to keep track of what's going on when you get up into Steam. So I'm just going to put 1908. I think I'll put early start in actually. And then the next thing we got to do is bring in an image file. Now, the one I always prefer, if I can find it, is the actual mini-map overview, which would then be put onto the front of the map when you do. So we just come into there. So what I've done now is imported the mini-map from the terrain editor. And what will happen is that will go up as the map that will form the thumbnail. Now, if you want a different thumbnail, this is the point to import it. Now, be aware that there is a max size, I think it's a Steam limit of 1 megabyte. So the actual size of this image is 512 by 512 pixels. So the next thing I'm going to do now is import a text file. It's got to be a standard simple text file. You can see here it says txt utfb on your disk, so you actually need a prepared disk file. Now what I do is just put in a subset of the description I want in Steam, because the problem is if you bring in a really big text file, what will happen is it will bleed off the bottom of the screen, and then that makes it a little bit of a pain. So I'm just going to import that, and you can see here straight away this isn't a very big text file, but it's still bled out the bottom here. And what I've got in here is a very simple description and a couple of other bits and pieces, like the guide to being able to change the date, which I keep in a prepared file. And then what you do now is you go create item, and you can see it says item now created. And if you've got the landscape right, what you'll find is you get these icons down the bottom. Now, the next one you actually want now is import terrain, because what this is going to do is take the map file you've created in the terrain editor and basically put a copy into the WIP folder. And what I've got here is cold start. I always name the map in the terrain editor to the same as the map that I'm going to publish in Steam. It just gives you that continuity in the way you're actually going to manage things. So what we're going to do is just click this, and it says load selected game. You can see now what we've actually done is come into the terrain editor. And if we come up to here and do a save, you can see by doing this save, it says current game was saved, name Cold Conquest 1908 early start, folder workspace WIP. So what's happened now is this map is now bound to the WIP item. Now, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quit back, because you can't get back to the WIP. What you've got to do is quit to menu. And as I say, this is where it all gets a little bit confusing. Now, if you come back into the WIP now, what you will find is you've now got an entry in here, which covers your requirements. And if you click on this and open it. Now, just as an example, if you run the terrain editor now, so we're back in the terrain editor, and of course, if we do a save, we'll do exactly what we've done before. But I want to show you the save as. What you'll see is it will tell you at the top here that your actual loaded game is in the WIP, but you cannot put another version back into the WIP. So if you use the save as, what it will do is put another copy back into the terrain editor. This is a mistake that's very easy to make, and I must admit I've made it several times. That once you've created the save game, it's become effectively locked into that WIP location with the associated number. This is a potential problem that you may you need to be aware of. If for some reason that you say you find an error or you want to make a slight change to the map, don't use the save as. You've lost that option to make other copies. What I will say is if it's a major change, what you need to do is quit back to the main menu. It's a very cumbersome process. Come back into the where's the workshop, the WIP, and if you click here, what you can do, so if you've got to make a major change to the map, what you want to do is make them change back in the terrain editor, and then save it back to the original file that you've got in the terrain editor, and then re-import it. Don't make the change and do a save as. It won't work. Either that, or you make the change and then just do a normal save. Hopefully that makes sense, because this is the trap that can really catch you out. I know from personal experience, when I did my first maps, was taking them up into Steam, and then I was looking at them and I thought, well, that's not what I wanted. That's an old version. The final thing you want to do is actually where it says save changes. So if you do save changes, what you'll see now is it says upload in progress. And what's happening now is that this is where the map is actually being published to Steam. One thing I will say about this is that in the next part, I'm going to go up into Steam and show you what I do in Steam. Now, if you redo the upload, looks like Steam's running a bit slow today, so it's very important to understand that if I went into Steam and set the map up and then decided to make a change and then re-upload this WIP item, what will happen is this description will overwrite whatever you've got up in the Steam description. That's the reason why I said about putting the actual correct title in here. And what we're going to do now is just going to quit out, back out here. So here we are, we're on the workshop page for Workers and Resources Soviet Republic. Apologies that I've had to do a full screen grab. The reason for that is that if I did a small window, what you have is a distraction of the recording software running in the background, and I can guarantee you it is very annoying and distracting. So once you've got into the workshop, what you're looking for is your icon here and it says your files, and it says below here, files you have posted. And what you'll do is you come into here, you can see it's changed very quickly. And what you'll see now is there's an icon here with the minimap that says Cold Conquest 1908 early start. The test map next to it is where I did a bit of a practice before I started the video. And what you'll see in here is all the maps you've created will come up with this icons here. And what I'm going to do now is, if you double click on it, what it will do is open up here. And what you will see is you've now got the ability to edit into here what you actually want to do. And you can, don't be too worried about the fact that this is truncated, because this window actually shows images in, I can't remember what the format is now. I think it's 960 by 360. And then on the right hand side here, what you've got is the ability to edit the description, also add images and videos. So what you can do, if you click here, you can come in here and you can go uploads. And what I've done is I've created a number of videos. I can't remember where they are now. Not videos, sorry, images. I've got a thing called custom maps, Siberia. And then what I've got is a whole series of image here. You click one. I've never been able to find out whether you can actually bring these up individually, but I'll just do a couple just to show you. And what you do is you bring up the images that you need. I only do the two, and then you do save and continue. What you'll find now is you get the images across the bottom here like this of your map. And of course what you see now is that the over your thumbnail map, the one on where it says landscape in the corner, is your thumbnail. So this is the where you need to see it. And then below here you've got the scrollable images that you can put in. Tend to do 4 or 5 depending on the complexity of the map. You can edit this area here. You can see here that the text description that I uploaded included a link, and now the link's become active. But over here you can also add, so it says here, add remove required DLC. This is new. So let me just see. Right, we'll just add that, done. Basically what that will do is give a warning that when someone checks this map, I'm assuming, to say that in order to play this map you need that DLC. I must admit that's the first time ever I've used it. You can also down here add links as well. There it says here, down here it says required DLC. There's also a way that you can add, say for example, if you put mods on the map, you can create a mod list and then add that to it. Generally, I've only ever done it once, and it is a really painful process. So that's the reason why when I create maps, I try to avoid using mods. I stick purely with the vanilla buildings. You can also add links to YouTube, Facebook, and all the other gubbins. Finally, once you're happy with what you've got here, what you've got is this option here. At the moment, you can see it's hidden. And then what you can do is you can either set it to friends only if you want people to preview the map. And then the ultimate one is you turn it to public, and what that will mean is the map will then be published onto the Steam Workshop for everybody to see. So that's it, guys. Hopefully what I've said makes sense. I'm aware that it's a bit of a convoluted process, but the key factor that you need to be aware of is plan the steps. Get your map 99.99% ready in the terrain editor before you create the whip, because that editing phase in the whip can be very confusing and it's very easy to kind of put up the wrong map. Also, it's quite important that because you create the whip, and if you do another upload, you will overwrite this text description here. Another thing also is by doing it this way, you can see I've actually posted this on the 28th of June, which is the correct date. If you start using the whip prior to completing the map, so that you're actually editing and uploading, this won't show the 28th of June. This will show the date that you actually first created the whip. For example, say you spend a month editing the map and you've been using the whip. This would say something like the 28th of May or something like this. Again, that's another reason why you do really need to do the whip at the last moment until you're ready to go. And as for the other bits on this side, have fun exploring it. This is where I'm going to leave it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting. Any questions or anything like that, feel free to chuck it in the comments and I'll try and answer them. Until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.